So now we take a dive into the politics of 2024 in South Africa. We do a review of the politics and how it was for South African politics 2024. On this, I'm joined by Mr. Sandile Swana, who is a political and governance analyst, in taking a look back in time in 2024. Mr. Sandile, thank you for your time and welcome to Salam Media.
Hello.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Sandile, and welcome to Salam Media.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me open my cam. Thank you. I'm here.
All right. So, Mr. Sanil, now we've just started 2025. Everything seems to be still subtle. Yesterday, many offices reopened for the year of operation. And now, obviously, starting in the main aspect, I think the main highlight of 2024 would have been the first one was the elections. Now, if you can just take us through the elections of 2024 and what we actually learned from them and how we can govern ourselves going forward then.
Thank you so much, Toyani. The elections of 2024 were historic and a watershed moment where, for the first time in 30 years, the African National Congress lost the majority. Before going into the election, they were at 57% of popular support. And at the end of the elections, after 29 May, they were now sitting at 40%. So it was a big drop. However, we must say that from the year 2009 up until 2024, a steady decline. Every single election they were losing. Whether that election was, they were losing support, but never actually outrightly losing majority. But there were signs already in 2021 where they got 45% of the aggregate total in South Africa. Of the total votes collected across municipality, they got 45%. So in a sense, mathematically, you could say the 40% that came in 2024 was, there were signs that it was coming. A sign that they could do worse in future elections. Yeah.
Now, obviously, looking at that statistic that you just mentioned, obviously, one of the things we saw that it's actually that people had lost confidence in the ANC, and that also is what led us into what we now have, which is the second point of looking at 2024, the GNU. Now, what is the highlight that we're looking at now in terms of the GNU and how it's actually affecting governance, whether it's positive or negative, and coming on until the next elections?
When you talk about people losing confidence in the African National Congress, which was the dominant party in South Africa up to this point, one of the issues has been the economic issue of unemployment, and I will come to the issue of the GNU just now. Unemployment, when you take the 30-year period as a whole, the unemployment worsened, up to 12.4 million, and we expect them to go to 12.7 million by end of December. Well, December is already past when the results come out. So before the GNU came in and after the GNU came in, unemployment continued to be a problem, and the GDP growth rate continued to be a problem. So the GNU was formed. The poverty and lack of money that our people have had and lack of productivity that they've had has continued unabated. So that has been remains one of the cornerstones of disaffection, apart from the uncontrolled sewage in many places, uncleansed cities, as well as shortage of water. They call it water shedding, load shedding, and other things. Now they've moved from load shedding to load reduction. So that is that. Then on the GNU itself, the label of the GNU was stuck onto the Grand Coalition by Cyril Ramaphosa. However, we must note that the so-called GNU did not follow the ideals that were propounded by the DA and by the ANC, which simply said you must not give small parties positions, but positions must be allocated with the amount of votes that a person gets. But along the same vein, they excluded uh, MK, and they also excluded the EFF, which remains a hot potato and a thorn on the flesh of the GNU politically, as those two parties are dissatisfied together with their supporters. So the GNU has about 6 months in office now, and another 6 months remaining on the critical issues of unemployment and GDP performance. They are still in the doldrums. They are still in the muddy areas.
That obviously now that looking more at the local and domestic issues of the politics. Now going into more of the international front, we see that there was a big change in the chairmanship of the G20, where South Africa is seen to be the president for the upcoming 2025 G20 meeting. And how has that now also faced or highlighted on South African politics, and how do we see ourselves going forward on this point?
Yes, you've already seen, if you look at it from the perspective of South African politics, there are some few points you can raise. One of the points being that the obviously the DA and others, the right wing and big business, want to maximize the benefits that can go to those who already own businesses, who already control the economy. So they are happy with that and they want to maximize that. Then you've also seen the Black Business Council stepping in to say some of the people that have been appointed to manage some of the aspects of the G20, the consulting firms, are the same ones that have been conducting corruption, multinational corporations that have been conducting corruption in South Africa, and they must be removed. So you can already see from a domestic perspective in South Africa that there is a clash of interest. Those clash are along those who have historically controlled the South African economy versus those who still want to get into the South African economy, whether you want to call them on the one hand white monopoly capital and the emerging black capital on the other hand. So that has been that. But however, from an African and the third world or the people of the South perspective, we would expect South Africa to look carefully at what Brazil has been doing up to this point, especially to see how development funding could be made available on highly affordable terms to the people of the South and the people of the third world.
Now, also, when looking at the G20, also look at the adverse side, which is the BRICS, and what there has been promised from the BRICS development structure. Now, how is that now coming into play in terms of the economic structure of South Africa and the SADC? All in all, actually, the whole of Africa, which we've always seen previously in many situations, that Africa always becomes the receiving point in terms of aid and other points, but when can Africa now be empowered to be a role player in the world economics? Now, with the BRICS coming into play, with the new expansion that's taken place, we see countries such as Ethiopia who are trying to come in. Nigeria has also been added, and other countries like Indonesia, etc., and role players, Iran and the UAE, etc. Now, what is the role of South Africa now going to be with the BRICS moving forward?
Well, South Africa still has a good chance of becoming a BRICS player and using the structures of BRICS and also direct relationships with the individual BRICS countries, like the technology, science and technology arrangements, which are very deep with Russia, our arrangements with China and India. So those need to be deepened. However, the perspective that needs to develop now is to say, with, for instance, the Cape to Cairo roads and the major routes, railways and routes and telecommunications across the continent, South Africa needs to play a role in facilitating that and making sure that goods and people and ideas can traverse across Africa at speed, so that trade within Africa is actually happening. Two, South Africa needs to aggressively develop continental innovation system so that new products, new technologies are invented within Africa itself. So South Africa, if I were to give a score of 1 out of 10, I would put them at about 15 in terms of readiness to play the role that I have defined. But it's a role that can give enormous rewards to African countries and stupendous growth to the South African economy itself.
No, very well said, Mr. Swana. And we look at a upcoming 2025. We are looking forward to seeing the politics realm of South Africa changing for the best, and more specifically, coming back to the point of unemployment. We hope to see eradication of unemployment and the poverty line also being scraped off. Thank you for your time, Mr. Sandile Swana, for your outlook and also looking back into 2024 politics. And please do have a wonderful day. Right.
Thank you,
Mr. That was Mr. Sandile Swana, a political and governance analyst, looking back into 2024 politics of South Africa and how we are going to go forward. Now, next up, after the break, we'll be taking a look at the spreading or rapidly spreading of the new virus which has been found in China, the HMPV, known as the metapneumovirus. And on that, I'll be joined by Dr. E.V. Rapiti and discussing more about it. Let's take a break.